everybody. It's Friday afternoon out here on the West Coast. It's Friday evening, early Friday evening on the East Coast. It might be late Friday over there in Europe, or it could even be Saturday, depending on where you are in the world. But no matter where you are, you know what time it is. It's time for another episode of Cinema Crusaders and our retro review show where we take a look at shows that are at least 10 years old that we think deserve a second look. And we want to see how they hold up today and introduce them to modern audiences. Today's movie is In the Line of Fire from 1993, starring Clint Eastwood, Rene Russo, and John Malkovich, among others. This is a movie that was on my radar back then, but I never got to it. I was a little busy being in the Army and a bunch of other stuff, but I wanted to see it, and then like many movies, I just never got around to it, which is one of the great things about Cinema Crusaders. There's lots of movies I've meant to see and haven't gotten a chance to see, and I got the chance to see this one. So I'm very thankful, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. Steve Sellers, whose movie this is, I'm about to introduce him in a moment, picked this movie, and he wanted to see how this movie holds up because he had watched it when it first came out. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say, as well as what our other Crusaders have to say. But before we get into the movie and start talking about it, as always, I need to introduce my fellow Cinema Crusaders, those incredible individuals without whom I could not do this show. They bring a wealth of talent and passion for cinema that is worth looking at. Real quick, though, I want to say hey to Macabre Mike on Countless Corpses who came in. So, hey, what's going on? And without further ado, I'm going to start introducing our Cinema Crusaders. So, he is a writer, a educator, an English professor, and an all-around knowledgeable fellow who knows quite a bit about a whole range of subjects. But I would say that his knowledge of Doctor Who and the history of X-Men is unparalleled. I'm talking about my friend, none other than Steve Shadewing Sellers. How you doing, Steve?
Doing pretty well. This movie was one that I remember having seen in the theaters, but I never really got around to watching it later on. So there was not a lot that I remembered other than that I liked seeing it at the time, and that John Malkovich was really memorable in it. So I wanted to see exactly how well it holds up. We got to hear by the way of Steve Railsback, who, by the way, is uncredited in this movie. And having seen the role that he's in, and who he is in this movie, that makes a weird kind of sense. But we'll get into that pretty soon. But yeah, this movie, I think it really holds up. I really dug it.
I will say, like I've said it many times, people are probably tired of hearing it, but my favorite Steve Railsback performance is the two episodes of X-Files where he plays Dwayne Barry, who's an FBI agent who they think has gone crazy. And I like to think, I put this right at, I'm now putting In the Line of Fire in the X-Files universe, and that Dwayne Barry went to the FBI, and then all the stuff that happened with him happened there, and that this character in here is Dwayne Barry. I'm saying it now. It's canon now. That's it. It's over. Everyone take it to the bank. It's gospel. So
I buy that. I can totally see that.
All right. Next, I'm going to introduce an incredible artist. He has worked on Mr. Happy, Symbols of Liberty. He's also working on Blood World, bringing new stuff to life there. He's going to have a comic that we're going to be doing from Raincross Press eventually. He's also an incredible writer, a very knowledgeable person on cinema, stunt work, a whole host of things. A great friend. I'm talking about none other than Jeff Bracey. Roll those R's.
That's incredible. All of that is untrue. Okay, maybe some of it. Yeah, I really enjoyed this film. It's a particularly good Clint Eastwood film, but it's hard to find a Clint Eastwood film that isn't good, is it? And such a strong cast throughout. So really looking forward to getting into that. And this was in the early days of digital technology where they started using it in very fun ways before everything became CGI. I love how they would splice Clint into photos and clips of footage with Kennedy. That's a sweet way to use CGI.
Quick trivia question to all you out there. If you can answer it, you get yourself an evil piece from Countless Corpses podcast. What was the first movie to popularize taking someone and digitally putting them not only into pictures, but into film clips and stuff as well.
Forrest
Was it?
Forrest Gump.
You're absolutely correct. You get yourself an evil piece. Contact Macabre Mike for that. So, all right. And last but not least, I want to introduce a man who is a filmmaker himself. He has made a whole host of award-winning short films, but he's not only that. He is a writer, a comic book creator, one of the most talented individuals out there who deserves all the praise he's getting, and I hope that it just continues to grow for him. And he's a real treat to talk to about cinema and film. He brings the active movie makers' perspective to our discussions, which is always invaluable and a really, really cool thing to bring. I'm talking about another one of my friends, none other than Lance Lucero of Warehouse 9. How you doing, Lance?
Doing good. Howdy, howdy. Hopefully I am glitch-free today. We will see. Maybe it's a conspiracy. I don't know. But I remember this flick. Didn't see it at the movies. I remember I was walking through my mom's house and she had it, like, she was on cable. And I remember her saying, "Hey man, Clint Eastwood's a little too old for this." And I was kind of like, I guess I kind of agree with you on that. And then I gave it 5-10 minutes, and then it has completely fallen off my radar since the last 30 years. But it was interesting to see it. It is a movie of its time. And it's Wolfgang Peterson, man. We're talking Das Boot, you know.
Yeah.
This is what I like to say. It's a very, very high dollar Hollywood production that is just loaded with cliches.
Yeah. I mean, and we're going to jump into that. I mean, we could talk about it when we talk about Clint Eastwood, because I had some of the same concerns. Now, I was able to put reality aside, but for instance, I commented on X or Twitter, whatever we're calling it now, that you're going to have to put reality aside to tell me that a 60-some-year-old agent played by an agent Clint Eastwood is beating the crap out of CIA-trained killer John Malkovich. You know, it's like, you know.
Yeah. There's a lot of disbelief there. And then, of course, we got to realize that Secret Service guys were forced into retirement at the age of 52.
Yeah.
I think part of the point there is, like, Malkovich has taken at least one bullet in the climax.
But so has Clint. He said he had broken ribs, you know, so.
Yeah, but he was wearing.
I'm putting it down to sheer adrenaline.
Malkovich
I can't explain it any other way.
Bulletproof vest too. You know, once again, it's like we could debate it, and I'm sure we could all have our points, but
silicone gut on. That's what he was packing.
But at this point, it's like it's one of those movies where you kind of just you suspend disbelief and just enjoy it. You know, there are things you could go into, like. Right away, I was asking a question. It's like, how is an agent who was on the protective detail, which takes a while to get onto in the Secret Service, by the way, of Kennedy, still at the Secret Service 30 years after the Kennedy assassination? You know, so that is a real question. But, you know, I don't think we need to answer that question because we just enjoy the movie the way it is. Mm-hmm. With that said, I do want to get into the actors and actresses, the three main ones. But I also want to talk about any supporting actor, and we'll go around the horn on that. I don't think there's a ton to talk about here on production, but I did want to talk about writing because I think there are some incredible writing tips and ways to build drama in this movie that I took out of it. But first off, I do want to talk about the cast members. I'm going to put them 2 by 2 here. So we could get through this and then get on to the next segments. But right off the bat, I want to put Rene Russo and Clint Eastwood together to talk about. And I'm going to go Steve first to go around the horn. My 2 thoughts on it. I thought Clint Eastwood was Clint Eastwood in this movie. You know what he's going to bring. And he brings it with a coolness and panache that he's always had. You know, from the spaghetti westerns on, I mean, the first opening scene of this movie is pure Dirty Harry. You know, I was waiting for him to say, "Do you feel lucky, punk?" But Clint Eastwood is a professional and a talent. Rene Russo was up and coming here. I think she was fairly established, but hadn't been established long. And I enjoyed her quite a bit in this role. And I think that a lot of writers of female characters now could take some notes from A, the way Rene Russo plays her character, and B, the way she is written, which is she's a strong female character who holds her own with the boys in a male profession, but doesn't have to be a girl boss or queen bitch to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, and I enjoyed that part quite a bit. That's my 2 cents, but I want to go to Steve next. What did you think of Clint Eastwood and Rene Russo in their parts here as, and let me get the names just to get it correct, Frank Horrigan and Lily Raines. So,
okay. Generally, I thought both of them were pretty good. The thing with Clint Eastwood is that he's playing.
Mike?
Hey, what's going on?
Yeah, we'll get to the evil piece later when we talk about Malkovich. But yeah, I would say Clint Eastwood is basically playing like an older Batman. He's not quite Dirty Harry, but you see in the beginning with John Kramer, well, the guy who basically the guy who's played by Tosin Bell, I think is. You definitely see him kind of going there, and there are times when he gets a bit edgy, but he never quite crosses the line. He really is more like, okay, I'm here to protect people no matter what, and he holds to that code, even though has that code constantly tested by Malkovich's character Leary the whole way. And so a lot of this is about, does he break that? And the way that that whole dedication to that code is played out plays out very, very well. So yeah, it's a Clint Eastwood character, and yeah, I mean clearly, this guy has aged past a lot of the standard tough guy roles that he played back in the day, and that was kind of the point. Is he a relic? Is he part of a bygone era? Is he able to hold his own now the way that he did back when he ran with Kennedy? Should he retire? And all of these questions are given an answer to them, and they're addressed, I think, reasonably and fairly in the movie. As for Rene Russo, yeah, I will say, I understand that it's Clint Eastwood, but it's like, and it is a bit May December. But yeah. So it's like, yeah, you don't really get a sense of like a lot of chemistry in the sense that we've talked about with previous films, like with Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn. I mean, even though the actors were like decades apart, there was absolute chemistry. I didn't feel it as much with Russo and Eastwood, but they're both solid actors. They're both solid professionals who do a really good job. And at the same time, I do agree that, Russo's character, is a strong female character, but she's not trying to prove it every minute and every frame of the movie. She brings her own kind of strength, and it's a sort of acquired strength. But she, at the same time, holds her own with Eastwood, which, is an achievement in and of itself, given, what a legend this guy is for playing tough guys. So, if you're able to do that, and you're able to do it without being louder than him, you're doing something right. And I would say that's definitely the case with Russo. I mean, it's a solid pairing, by two really strong actors, and they bring it reasonably well.
And she had a history of that in movies as varied as Major League, which was really her coming out, to a movie like Outbreak, where she had a very strong
or even Thor, even Thor, where she plays Frigga. She holds her own with people like, Tom Hiddleston and Anthony Hopkins.
Yep. I will say, before I go to Jeff, I will just put this out there. One of the things that got me was they had Clint Eastwood telling jokes to Rene Russo's character early in the movie. And from a modern sensibilities, I was watching that going, hey, son, that is a sexual harassment lawsuit right there. So I was like, okay.
There are definitely lines that do not age well and would not be tolerated nearly as easily in 2024.
Yeah. So over to you, Jeff.
By the washed masses, maybe, but I'm from that period, and I'm still digging them.
All right. Over to you. What did you think?
As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and ride this pony a little bit.
Yep, he's right.
Yeah. Because he is of a previous generation, he's coming into the, back into the main fold of the service, leaving the undercover work. I do like that he has the eye for detail as a detective. He kids with her right away. I really like the relationship that goes on between Rene Russo and Clint Eastwood's characters here. between Hank and Lily, because he goes, oh, the secretaries are getting prettier, and she goes, I'm an agent. He's like, I know you're an agent. I just want to see if you can take a joke.
Oh yeah, he's busting her balls. Figuratively speaking.
Welcome. You're in the boys' club now, and there's a certain amount of hazing and joking, and the thing I like about Lily is that she doesn't feel the need to prove herself to anyone. She's proved herself by being there, and so she carries herself with a supreme confidence, and that makes for a very attractive character in the film. It's like, I know we're so tired of the whole super aggressive girl boss thing, but like, look at this character, and she's an outstanding character. She's everything she needs to be for the film. She is strong. She is confident. She's sensitive where she needs to be. She's supportive where she needs to be, and she's absolutely good at her job.
Real quick to interrupt for a moment, but I wonder when we lost this, and this is a whole nother podcast, but this era, we had strong female leads. I'm also thinking another 90s movie, Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs.
And it's not just the era of the 90s. It goes back. It goes way back. Like when you see people who discover Alien, like 1979, it's like, oh my God, this Ellen Ripley character is awesome. Yeah. Us old folks know. This isn't a new thing. All this crap you're pushing for. There are amazing characters out there. If you would actually care to dive into cinema that wasn't written by a committee, and find some really good movies out there. There's a lot of good stuff out there. You just got to go digging for it. But I particularly like the relationship between the two of them. I thought they did have enough charisma. I liked whoever, I don't know who wrote it, but the dialogue, and not just like, I'm sure you're going to get into the dialogue between Eastwood and Malkovich, which is excellent, that whole cat and mouse, that escalating of the game. But I really like the dialogue between these two Secret Service agents as a sort of romance, camaraderie flourishes. There's this playful flirtation, and this is, Clint Eastwood is almost Dirty Harry here, but not. He's carrying this burden of guilt, and you can see it, but you can also see when he's on the job and he's on point. And then you see this other aspect of him when he's like willing to be a little playful, a little flirty. And I think even though this is very May-December, that's what ultimately wins her over. It's not just his dedication to the job, but the fact that he is very charming. He has a lot of charisma. And he respects her. And watching this relationship blossom into something more than just a professional relationship was actually very entertaining. And, if there was a movie outside of these folks, having to deal with this situation, I would be engaged by that. I thought the two of them really carried a strong sort of side story within the movie. And I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Cool. I disagree a little bit, but only in the sense that I think the movie would have been fine without it. I don't think that it was a horrible aspect of the movie either. But it different strokes for different folks. It's like, and I don't think it was a bad thing. I understand what they were trying to do with it, in that they humanizes both characters. It brings a different element. It felt a little rushed to me, but but you got to do what you got to do within the time frame. So.
There's definitely a sense of somebody, the Hollywood, thinking of, well, there should be a romance in this movie because this is how movies go. At the same time, I think it works well enough for the movie, and it doesn't kill anything.
Yeah, and I don't go into what looks like it's going to be like an action drama movie of some sort. I'm not looking for the romance, but like, I didn't hate it. And if I don't hate this sort of movie, then, it resonated.
No, I get it. And I think this is a little part of me being cynical and jaded. So, because, and this could, not that I'm saying you're cynical and jaded, Lance, so don't read that wrong. But, you were talking about all the different tropes. That's kind of the way I felt when I saw the romance of this movie, and that was part of, what's expected. You can't have a pure action drama in this period without having that in it.
You need to have.
I will say
it.
I will. Yeah. Okay. Go on. I was going to say there are points though where it adds to the humor at times. Like when she's called away and he's playing the piano, and then he suddenly starts playing as time goes by.
Yeah.
Giving like a Casablanca feel. I'm like, okay, that was funny.
But
I like that.
I like the little jab when the paramedics are called in, and he's like, oh, when I find out which of the guys did that, and she like just walks out like, how do you know it was a guy? She like leaves.
So Lance, what did you think of Rene Russo and Clint Eastwood in these roles?
Well, solid performers. Absolutely. I do believe I agree with Steve about the lack of chemistry. That does take some suspension of disbelief, because at this point, even Clint Eastwood wasn't aging well, and it's like, okay, do I buy this? I didn't buy it, and I thought, I would have bought it more if they cut that down and just had them get together in the end at his apartment. I like the idea that they just left nice and casually to go get a drink. I would have bought it 100%. The only thing that I took away from it was that I think it's a little bit of a departure for Clint Eastwood to be the romancer. You don't see that very often. Bridges of Madison County, maybe. It's very, very rare. But to see him do the little bit of the nudge, nudge, wink, wink all the time kind of sucked me out. I was like, no, I'm not buying this at all. I really wish they would have killed that portion of it and stuck with the meat of the story. And then I would think it would have been better if their relationship grew casually like it did for the rest of the movie, and then they got together in the end. Performance-wise, it's solid. Story-wise, I'm going to say it's bad writing. I'm going to say it's bad directing. I was really surprised to see this going on, but then at the same time, I'm thinking this is a typical cliche big Hollywood movie that's structured as such, and I didn't expect anything different. Even when I saw his partner Dylan McDermott at the beginning, I automatically said he's dying. I didn't even have to go through a cliche. He's dying. Might as well put a red shirt on him. He's dead. I knew it wasn't going to happen within the first 10, 15 minutes, but I knew he was gone. So
there were so many clues pointing to that.
It was almost like you do a disservice to a performer when you blatantly put him in such a cliched role.
And then you tell him he's got wife and kids. It's like, oh, you're dead, man.
Yeah, it's like they were pouring it on, and I'm like, all right,
and then there are whole periods where he's not even in there. So it's like you can definitely tell the story doesn't even put a lot of emphasis on him. So it's like, okay, he's a red shirt.
No, he's there to die and give emotional stakes for Clint Eastwood. So.
And he already had investment in this. It's like his whole thing's about his guilt.
How much of that do you need?
So
he didn't need a revenge motivation on top of the the whole thing with the guilt.
Yeah. Now, I mean, and we're going at that point. We're going. Bringing in a bit of buddy cop from the 80s, when buddy cop movies were all the thing. So, and it was weird too, because suddenly in the middle of the second act, they became buddies when I didn't get that vibe from them for most of the first act and the beginning of the second act. So it was a very strange thing. It is what it is, but this movie is like that though. It's like, you suspend your disbelief, and it's a very enjoyable movie that I would sit down and watch again. But there are things about it that make it a movie of its time, like I said. But I think what you're talking about with writing transitions right into the second group of two characters I wanted to talk about, and also writing as general. And I'm going to go to Jeff next. But John Malkovich and God, I can't even remember his name now. God, I'm doing him a disservice. The guy who played the red shirt, Dylan McDermott. So, who plays red shirt number 2 in this movie. So, both of those characters serve a purpose, but like we were just talking about, I think one is incredibly well written and one is a tool, a crutch, I'm always going to say. Now, I think from what we were just talking about, in my opinion, the crutch is the red shirt. It's a way to artificially build stakes, and I think all of us pretty much agreed that the stakes were already there. And the stakes were there because of how well written John Malkovich's character was. And I think John Malkovich steals the movie. Every scene he's in, he steals completely. And to the point where I watched him. Here's one point where he does a little smile right before he's going to go try and kill the president. And I said, my God, this man could have been the Joker and he would have been perfect, you know? And just everything he does. And it occurred to me that, you know, I've harped on this before. In movies like this, in action drama movies or just drama, if there's an antagonist, the antagonist is the one who drives the movie. And if you don't have a well-written and well-acted antagonist part, your movie suffers for it. You know, it doesn't matter how good your protagonist is. If the antagonist does not build stakes and does not drive the plot forward, your story is going to suffer for it. And it doesn't matter if you're making a movie or if you're writing a book or a comic book, whatever it is. Antagonists drive the show. It's one of those weird things. We celebrate the superheroes, but the villains are the ones that make the whole thing interesting, you know? So with that in mind, you know, you can tell me I'm crazy or whatever it is, but I want to go to Jeff first. What did you think of the red shirt, Dylan McDermott, and the driver of the plot, in my opinion, John Malkovich in this movie? So.
Well, you know, there's a reason why the best superheroes are the guys who have the best rogues galleries. You know, you look at Spider-Man and Batman, and they've got rogues galleries that are so interesting because they do validate the reason that you need a superhero in different ways, and so it's you definitely need that. And Malkovich certainly delivers here. He's given a nice meaty role. Even though this film, interestingly, like it's Clint Eastwood's story in the film, so he's the one we see on the camera all the time, and all these other people who are very important, they come and they go in and out of the film. And I do like the way that we don't see Malkovich for a long time, and we see all these elements about him, that he's very smart, he's a master of disguise, he's a planner, he's thoughtful, and Malkovich embodies all of that. But you know, he's a legend in the business. You know, he's a masterclass actor. He is the guy. And so, you know, if you're going to have somebody opposite Clint Eastwood in an antagonistic role, you need that sort of thing. You need somebody like a Gene Hackman from Unforgiven.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Little Bill drives that movie. So. Yeah,
you need somebody with that kind of gravitas and presence, someone who can really challenge your hero. And Malkovich's character has everything going for him in this film. Now, poor Dylan McDermott, as much as I liked Rene Russo's character, I didn't really care about Dylan McDermott at all.
He's a red shirt.
And he's a good actor. He's a good actor, but he just wasn't given a lot. He was definitely, you're going to die here guy. And you know, you can keep seeing like all the guns and knives off stage, just all pointing at him. It's like, you know, like the sign, he's got a bullseye on his back, kill me here, this sort of thing. You know, we set up in the very opening where it looks like he's going to get murdered right away, and it keeps going. And you guys talk about how you felt like things were a bit forced with Russo and Eastwood. Here's where I thought things were forced. The relationship between, you know, Hank and his partner here is very forced. You know, he's like, oh, you know, you're going to be a good agent. You're a good guy. You almost die. Oh, but I'm going to go home and hug my wife and kids. And then all of a sudden he starts having PTSD about it. Like, oh no, I can't do it. I wake up and I can't breathe. I'm talking you into it. Like, oh, that means you're dead for sure. Yeah. Talking you into staying. So like, it was so easy to see, so artificial. And like I said, McDermott's a good actor, and unfortunately, this time the movie and the writing of the film really let him down. He didn't really get to show us what he could do, what kind of presence he could have, and I'm glad he got to go on and do, you know, better things. But it was just kind of a doorstop here.
Even his death scene was kind of ridiculous, you know. It was just
That was disappointingly the most lamest, lacking of pathos death scene I've even seen. When you look at Clint Eastwood on the what do you
fire escape?
on the fire escape outside, He even looks like he can't believe it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I'd argue Eastwood got a better death scene, when he threw himself in the path of the bullet at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was unfortunate. And you were speaking of Little Bill. And it's just not just Little Bill. I mean, you could go back. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. You can go back to Hamlet. Hamlet's not the same without Claudius. So it's just not. So you need those people. Othello and Iago. So
I was about to say Iago. Like, talk about a great villain for your hero.
Yeah. And really, he's got the best lines. So, over to you, Lance. What did you think of these two, John Malkovich and Dylan McDermott in the movie?
Well, I liked Dylan McDermott. Man, he caught my eye way back with Hamburger Hill in 1987. And in a movie like this, he was just completely wasted. He was a victim of bad writing and bad directing. This is a bummer to see.
Can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by bad? Bad writing, I'm completely with you, but I got an idea what you mean by bad directing, but can you give me a little bit more on what you saw?
Well, blatantly his death scene. I mean, he gets shot, and then there's this long pause, and then all of a sudden he falls forward 5 feet and just that's bad directing. That's bad movie making. I think the way they could have just saved that is had him injured and live, and be in a hospital. I think that would have been 100 times better, and it would have actually redeemed his character. But to me, it's bad writing, bad directing. It's not bad acting, because what if you had to tell the actor you just got shot, 20 feet away with his new high-powered plastic gun, which they've established is a pretty hardcore weapon. You're getting hit with the bullet. You're falling backwards. You're not going to fall forward 4 feet and then dangle over the edge. It was just, I laughed out loud. It was silly.
You know what it reminded me of, Lance? It reminded me of one of those horror movie jump scares thing where you open up the closet and the body falls down dangling.
Yeah, that's why I laughed. I was like, this is so ridiculous.
I think the editing suffered too, because it just seems very abrupt and it doesn't quite seem to flow right.
Yeah, there's a bullet hole in his head.
He's still alive. Yeah.
It would have been so much cooler if he got shot, and if he's not going to fall back out of sight, if he tumbled forward off the building, that would have at least been dramatic. I was really expecting when he fell away, and Clint's hopefully sitting there going like, "Oh man, is he okay?" And the assassin gets away, and the cops come. I was like, "He's dead, Frank." Or he's dead, Hank. He's like,
And I actually got to stand corrected, because he didn't shoot him with his plastic gun. He unloaded on him with that 9mm. Yeah. So I'm like, all right. That aside, the red shirt aside, you look at Malkovich, he played it masterfully. Yeah, it was a flesh.
It's kind of like getting a lightsaber wound in modern Star Wars.
Right. And I think it does go. I think I see what you're saying with directing, but I still think the genesis of the whole problem is writing. I mean, if you really wanted emotional stakes around this character we all knew was going to die, have him get shot twice with a collapsed lung, and have Eastwood have to go out. They take him to the hospital and he dies on the operating table, and Eastwood has to go tell his wife and kids that he's dead.
Oh, that would be.
There's 100 different ways that it could have been better for a $60 million movie. But this is what irks me. It's ridiculous. And if we're contemplating this, imagine what a general audience member is doing. They're probably going to pan it. Yeah.
I'm Lance, the way that death scene was staged, that's all the director.
It is. Because you never know what the script said. It just might have said he gets shot. Now,
before I go to Steve, I got to ask you this question, Lance. So, all right, I'm the writer. I'm seeing, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm seeing the writer-director relationship kind of like the writer-artist relationships in a comic book. So I write a scene, and it looks good in my head when I write it. And when you're the director or the artist and you start having to block this out and make this come to life, you're like, you know what, this just doesn't work visually. Is that kind of what we're talking about here, where you got to go back to the writer and go, look, this may have been great in your head, but this is not going to work visually? So
it depends. I mean, it could have been all on the director. He might have said, we need something more than him just getting shot. We need to increase the drama. And at that point, the writer might not even be on set. A lot of times the writer's not there because they get in the way, they grumble, and the director's like, look, this is the director's movie. It's now my movie. You wrote it, but it's my movie, so get out of the way. I don't even want to hear your opinion. I think that's probably the way, in my gut, it went down, because I do believe it was probably written better, maybe. But in the grand scheme of things, it was still poorly written because it was all a cliche. And that is on the director, I think. It's like, if you see the bad writing, you can fix it visually. But if you think you can enhance upon it so cheaply, then you do the whole movie and the script a disservice. That's just my opinion. I mean, even looking at how they wrote John Malkovich's character. I mean, is it a bombshell? Oh, all of a sudden he's this elite assassin that's just so badass. And I'm thinking, oh man, it would have been better if he was more of an average Joe. If he was more of just an average disgruntled Joe for some reason, other than him having to parallel Clint Eastwood's character about being disgruntled government employees, if you were. So I think they took that a little too far. And that kind of sucked me out of the story. I was like, well, why did they have to have that commonality? Why do they have to have that parallel? It didn't add anything to the story for me. If he was already a fabricator, if he was already into fabrication, I can buy the fact that he can put on makeup and do disguises. I can buy the fact that he can make that weird gun. I can buy all those facts. But now all of a sudden he's this elite assassin. And, we're talking about John Malkovich, a wonderful character actor, but do I buy him as an elite assassin that's this badass dude? I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it at all. I was like, oh, okay, they upplayed that a little too much.
You need to go see Red 1 and 2.
I did buy it, but I hear what you're saying. And I think part of the problem I have is there are a lot of threads here which seem to be rushed. Like, I didn't see that it was necessary and advanced. I mean, I guess it advanced the plot, but when he killed the bank teller and everything, I said, I think there are other ways to go there without having to do that scene. And you could have had time to build up the relationship between the two of them more and stuff like that. So
absolutely. And to me, that was like another silly scene. It was like, well, they had, or the super sleuth aspect of them tracking down the name of the check and the account. I thought that was a lot better. To actually have him follow her and then murder her and her roommate, it was so gratuitous. I laughed again, just like the Dylan McDermott scene. I was like, okay, this is so ridiculous. You know what I mean?
There is no way that woman is letting you in the house after you admit you followed her home.
Exactly. And I once again, I'm going to say it. That's an example of bad directing. You put a performer in a position. And I think, any sound-minded female would think, that's really creepy. I'd lock the door instantly. But no, oh, come on in. No, I'm like, that is bad writing and bad directing.
Okay.
It annoys me, man. It just freaking annoys me. I'm like, all right, I'm in though. I'm in. I'm watching this whole thing. But I'm like, all right, these people got paid. Damn it, they got paid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Let's see where Steve goes. Steve, are you going to ride in and save this thing?
Unlikely.
I don't know. I guess I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about McDermott first. Yeah, he was deserved. I will say he is a good performer, doing the best he can with a role that really wasn't worth much. And there were moments where it does kind of give him something. Like early on, like him sort of selling the fear that he might actually be killed by Eastwood. Like that actually kind of worked. I bought that because I mean most normal people are in that situation are going to be creeped out and they're going to kind of wonder if they're going to survive that whole thing. So I kind of bought that. But the thing is like it taps out and they don't take it to the next step. And a lot of it is basically, he's written to be a red shirt. And, oh, look at my kids. Oh, I'm having PTSD. And it's kind of hard even to buy that it's that debilitating when you think about what Eastwood's been through. Like, yeah, you failed to save the president. You got you were over getting shot at back at this time, and here you are dealing with guilt for decades because you were there in Dallas and you didn't save the guy. Well,
I don't want to.
Who knows where he was during Hinckley? I'm just kind of wondering where he was there.
I don't want to bring real world knowledge into it, but if you're a police officer or a Secret Service agent or in the military, and you have an experience like that, and you are actively going to counseling, you're not on duty. You're on desk duty. So you know. So.
Yeah, he should have been. I mean, the thing is, I will say I did buy a little bit Eastwood having this kind of like maybe caring a little bit more than he let on, because I could see him saying, "Okay, this was me when I was starting out." I could buy that. But it's never played that way, and it's never played convincingly. And then of course, it's like, okay, yes, he goes out shooting, trying to shoot the guy and whatnot, and what ends up being a pretty futile death. He's a red shirt, unfortunately, and it's unfortunate because this is a guy who went on to playing lawyers in big time lawyer shows, things like that. This is where he made his career. But and I honestly had forgotten he was in this movie. That's pretty much how forgettable he is in this movie.
Yeah.
So yeah. But I will tell you, what does save the movie is John Malkovich, and just the sheer amount of charisma he brings and the sheer amount of performance. He is into this role, and a lot of times, people are willing to forgive problems with the story if you're drawn to the character, and some of that is the writing, which is is kind of hit or miss, but I think largely at least was there. With the charisma of John Malkovich, and the guy is massively charismatic. I mean, if you look at Dangerous Liaisons, this is a guy who plays, essentially a serial womanizer, and you believe it the entire time. He brings that level of intensity, and yet he plays evil a little differently here than he did there. Which I find very, very interesting. He is very, low key a lot of the time, but when he explodes big time, and it is powerful. He dominates very much. What were you going to say now?
I was going to say he reminded me for some reason of Hannibal Lecter from Silence of the Lambs and his menace with his voice. I think Lecter is more evil and has even more menace. I think Anthony Hopkins is great in that movie. And in my opinion, that movie is superior to this one, but it did remind me of that.
Yeah, it's the level of the villainy, and and it's like we've been talking about. Sometimes you basically need that villain to drive things. I think it was Peter David who said, "Villains act, heroes react," and that's very much this movie. It's Malkovich's plan that is forcing Clint Eastwood to act. I mean, he even acknowledges at the end of the movie, where would you be if not for me? I saved your career. All of that. And there's definite truth to that, because it's like, he would have been a drunk, crying over his beer, playing piano every night, if he didn't have that level of threat to bring him back. It was that drive that he has to overcome his guilt for what happened to Kennedy, and this assassin kind of is stoking the flame of that makes Clint the hero that he becomes, and you definitely get a lot of that. As far as the similarities, I will disagree a little bit with Lance here. I think that this is really the commonality is what makes the hero villain dynamic sometimes so interesting. Is that you have a dark mirror of the hero, and because of that reflection, you get a deep look into the hero as well. Because not only does he represent, Eastwood's nightmare, he's the assassin that kills another president on his watch, which he doesn't want to see. He's also somebody that, was screwed over by the government the same way he was, sent out to pasture, as it were, a relic. It's just that one of them is deciding to deal with that by being a murderer, and the other one's trying to do that by showing I'm not as washed up as you think I am. I'm going to get the job done. And I think a lot of it is also Malkovich playing his code. The fact that and Malkovich has his own code, which is very, very interesting. So you get those kinds of clashes. I see what you're saying about maybe them pulling it too far, and there are definitely times when you could definitely make that case. But I did like that dynamic and that relationship, and I think that really is that drama is what kind of drags you in to the end of the film, and you really want to see like how it resolves itself.
I will say that I do agree with Lance definitely on this aspect, though, which is I think this movie is full of stereotypes and tropes, not only for the genre, but for the characters or the actors themselves. I mean, Clint Eastwood's character's name is Harry Horgan. It might as well have been Harry Callahan, the way
Frank.
it was going.
Yeah.
But
Frank is definitely a tough guy name. I mean, it is a generic tough guy name.
Oh, yeah.
That opening scene definitely felt like it belonged in a Dirty Harry movie.
Yeah, and I will say that Clint Eastwood, even earlier in his career, did play some genuinely vulnerable parts where he was not the hero. The first one that stands out for me, and I'm not telling Jeff to pick this, but Play Misty for me.
I knew you were going to say that.
Great movie.
Honky Tonk Man.
Yeah. I mean, but
I will say there is a definite save the cat formula about this movie, and there's a reason why, unfortunately, that formula works. It's because it plays on the audience's emotions in a way that satisfies, general audiences. It's just that if you're in tune with the code of writing, as DT likes to call it, as we all are, you kind of want more, and because we've seen this all before so many times in different ways.
Yeah, the tropes exist because they work.
I will say this though, it's like you said, they work, and then Hollywood beats them to death. It's like I remember when I saw Fatal Attraction and Single White Female, I was like, this is just redoing Play Misty for me, So it's like, I don't know. It is what it is. Now I'm gonna go around quick. I don't think there's a ton to talk about here, but I want to hear what you guys have to say because we like to talk about production, the filmmaking process on this. And I'm going to start with Lance. Is there anything that you wanted to bring out and talk about specifically about how this film was made that stood out for you, good or bad? So we've already hit the directing on the actors. So
right. Well, it's an absolute high dollar picture, beautifully photographed. I mean, it is top notch. The exteriors, the interior lighting. It looks crisp. It's very wonderful. John Bailey, the director of photography. I mean, come on, we're a guy that did Boulevard Nights, American Gigolo, Ordinary People, Cat People, The Big Chill. The list goes on. This dude, I was extremely impressed by how beautiful this movie looked. This is a wonderful standard. I even liked how when they were doing the road show with the president, how they were showing alternate cities like Denver, the Denver Civic Center, and Stapleton Airport before DIA opened. I forgot Stapleton Airport. I forgot all about it. It was a nice slice of history. And you could even see how they were dabbling more with layering their green screen. It isn't perfect. So when they're in Michigan or something and you see the president on the train, you can see how it was superimposed on top of the second unit footage. Which kind of made me laugh. It's like, okay, great. Geez, now I know my green screen doesn't look, you can't complain about my green screen if they're doing it here like that. Or where it backfires. Like you see Air Force One landing, and then the Secret Service agent, who's clearly green screen, walks into frame and speaks into his microphone. Air Force One has landed. Yeah, dude, we just saw that. You know why they shot that later? They had an actor there. It cost a fortune just to put in something that did not need to be there, but they did it with a special effect, which I thought it was hilarious. I was like, this is kind of funny. Even Clint Eastwood diving in front of the bullet. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's a green screen with him probably landing on a mat. Come on, he's 62 years old. You don't want to hurt your people. You don't want to have him embarrassed in front of like 100 people that are there in the production. There were things that just glared to me, but because the movie looks so good, I overlooked them. I'm like, hey, this is just great. Look at the Washington landscapes. Look at the sunsets. Look at how you can tell that's Colorado. you can tell that's Michigan because it's green, really green. You know, you could tell they were in certain places, and then you can also tell what was doubling for other places. But I think it's a sharp flick with some of the best production you can ask for. I mean, that's a dream to have these people involved to make a movie that looks this good. To me, that's its saving grace. I thought it was eye candy. I loved every shot of this movie, cinematography wise. I thought it was great.
Very cool. Steve, you were mentioning something interesting to me before we went on the air about the music. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I honestly did not know until I watched the very end credits. The person who did the musical score for this film is Ennio Morricone. And as a person who is a huge fan of spaghetti westerns, that name should be familiar to you because he did the music for the Dollars trilogy. You know, he's also done music for things like Kill Bill and, you know, various other things. This guy is very, very well known, mainly for westerns. But I was a bit surprised that he would do a movie like this. And honestly, I didn't even like place a style until I started listening to the music that they used for the end credits, you know, where they had a lot of those, you know, organ type of things. And it's like, yeah, that definitely sounds, you know, like the kinds of sounds that Morricone would use, which made me kind of want to go through there and listen to some of the pieces again and see if I could identify them, because it's just, I didn't even think about the music until that point.
Yeah, he was a definite innovator, and I still think the music from the various Man with No Name films is some of the best Western music ever. So, my opinion. Yeah. So, anyone want to take this one before I go to Chef? I didn't catch that. So.
What is the Save the Cat formula? Yeah, that's for me. Is that a reference to Lethal Weapon 3? No. Save the Cat is actually named for Alien, which is where Sigourney Weaver goes back in the end to save the cat. And that one actually is not like the best example because it's not a typical 3-act structure. But when you're talking about Save the Cat, it's usually like the standard formula you use a lot of Hollywood productions. Gremlins uses this. Back to the Future uses this. You know, a lot of Hollywood productions that are very, you know, centered, you know, with the 3-act structure. You know, and always you have to have that bit, you know, towards the end, which is a little bit Save the Cat-ish, which is why it's called that. There's an entire book called this, and it outlines every single thing. So, so when you're talking about formula movies, you're usually talking Save the Cat if you're talking about modern productions.
Exactly. So having said that, I see exactly where the Save the Cat formula comes in. The moment he's fired, he's ready to leave. He's going to board the airplane, and then there's the new clue. So then you not only have, this is what I'm talking about, cliches and tropes. Not only do you have the Save the Cat, but you have the Alfred Hitchcock ticking clock theory going on at the same exact time. Does it play well? It's so anticlimactic with him just racing around in a taxi cab. It's like
what you're talking about is the long dark night of the soul part. That definitely is straight out of Save the Cat.
Right.
I will say this, to borrow a line from French Kiss, and as a writer, it makes my ass twitch when I start hearing about formulas and how to do stuff. I'm like, oh my God, I want to jump off a building now, because I can't imagine. Maybe there are people who write like this, but sitting down and saying, here's my outline, my formula, how I've got to write. Now I got to write in that box.
Yeah. You know what?
I would want to kill myself. So
you know what? The first screenplay I wrote, I stuck with absolute, I mean, to the T structure, 3-act structure. You know, and to me, with all the turning points, all the intros, everything, I absolutely hated the script because it was so predictable, and you get trained to even see it when you watch productions. It's like, oh, okay, it's 30 minutes. We're going right into the second act. I mean, to me, it's so boring. Now, there's a couple of people that really try to beat me down because of this, because they're like Robert McKee fans or something. They're like, no, this is the way you should write a screenplay. And I'm like, well, so you're going to take another formula and write it? You know what I mean? At what point do you just take the formulas and kind of just let the story unfold? I mean, I'll say it. I like a long opening scene. I like a longer first act to get to know the characters. I like a very condensed second act, and I like a super fast third act. That doesn't fit into typical Hollywood standards, but I think it helps a story. Now, that's just my opinion. But, formula is a killer. Formula and absolute structure is, you cliche yourself. I get it. Practice it, but you don't have to freaking be devout to it.
I think this is my inner indie coming out, but I look at it the same way, and this is leading into Jeff. I'm going to segue to Jeff here, but it's the same way of martial arts. You learn the katas, you learn the forms, but that's not the way you fight. No. You learn those so you can fight dynamically. And Bruce Lee said it. The art of doing it is the effortless effort, to make everything
be water,
natural,
my friend.
Yeah. So, I mean, those writers, I'm sorry. I'm just going to, this is the indie coming out of me, but it's like, if you feel that you have to stick to the structure, you're a hack as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I think there's value in learning the structure, but if you're learning the structure,
absolutely.
It's to break the rules. It's to find new ways to break the rules, and that's not what they're doing. They're just going with the same.
You're learning the
formula because it sells, and not because it's good.
Yeah, you're learning the fundamentals in the structure.
Yeah, go ahead. You gotta know the rules before you can break or bend the rules. So there's that. But this is, like Lance said, a $60 million '90s movie, which was a good sized budget for the time. And it just, a lot of this movie feels very committee.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very Hollywood.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's 100% Hollywood, 100%.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna segue right to Jeff though. Here,
it's just well executed in certain areas, and enough that it kind of takes it above average. But it is a very Hollywood movie, and it is a very Save the Cat script.
Now, Jeff, you can go anywhere you want with production, but I do want to see. I have one question for you. Supposedly, this is an action drama, all right? And there's a little bit of action in here. What did you think of that? And what did you think of the production value of the whole movie overall?
I'm glad you asked this, because this is my chance to defend 65-year-old Clint Eastwood.
Okay, bring it.
When this movie came out, I watched some behind-the-scenes stuff back in the day, and I do remember John Malkovich talking about his 2 foot races against Clint Eastwood. John Malkovich is younger than Clint Eastwood, and Clint Eastwood had to slow down because he runs every day. Even as an old man, he runs. He is incredibly fit. I think he's a lot more fit. Like, you guys are like, oh, it's not very believable. And maybe it's because I have this knowledge of Clint Eastwood. It's like, yeah, I buy him running across the rooftops and running through traffic and all that, because he is literally doing it.
Let me give you
I'll also add that when we see Malkovich, he doesn't look like he's that much in shape. I mean, he has a beer belly.
Right,
that beer prosthetic.
Yeah. Let me give you a counterpoint, though, and you come back at me with how I'm wrong. The reason I didn't believe it was on this. If John Malkovich is a trained CIA killer, he's presumably gone to the College of the Americas, down at Fort Benning. He's gone through a bunch of training. He knows a variety of different martial arts styles, and he's familiar with all sorts of different weapons. Now, this is not a diss on Secret Service agents, but they are not trained armed. They're competent hand-to-hand combatants, but that's it. They're trained in other things, not like someone who is like that would be.
It all depends on where the Secret Service agents started. Some of them come from the military. Some of them come from the police.
Fair.
There's a wide range that can open up there. It all depends on who you are. Like a radio commentator, Dan Bongino. He didn't start out just as a Secret Service agent. So you can have a background where, like, and he's talked about there are men who are in the Secret Service agency, who came from the Marines, who came from Special Ops, who came from other things. So we don't get into that, so we don't know. We don't know Eastwood's background. And, as for Malkovich's training, martial arts training for the kind of jobs they're doing is not martial arts training.
No, it's Krav Maga. It's close quarters combat. It's
very tight. It's limited in the number of moves because you're looking for gross motor movements. They're not going to be fighting like Keanu Reeves in the John Wick films. It's not like that. It's very no nonsense. Although I wonder if Malkovich probably wished he had gotten
but-
better shape because
Right.
they
All right,
go.
but I'm gonna put this out there. That final scene, granted, Malkovich had just been shot by a high-powered rifle. Granted all that, but Malkovich fought like a wussy. I was gonna say another word. He fought like a wuss, man. I mean, he fought like crap. So
Here's where it
I mean, he's a great actor, but he's not necessarily like a great fighter. I mean, you can definitely tell that. Yeah,
it's a different kind of martial art. That's a whole other discussion.
You don't get what I'm saying, Mike. You don't get what I'm saying. It's not like a martial art.
It's a practical
practice.
It's a fighting
very,
style.
Very different.
Yeah.
Let's just do a.
They've taken the art out of the martial arts. There's like, when I think of martial arts, it's a very different thing than like MMA and all this other stuff they're doing. That is a martial sport, or it can be a martial self-defense system, which is not, it doesn't have 100 moves. It doesn't have katas. It doesn't have all these things. So like when Nim said martial arts, I was taking it in a different context. They learn combatives. That's entirely different. It's meant to be very effective, quick, fast, brutal, done.
The bottom line is: does the performer live up to the role? To me, I didn't buy Malkovich as this elite assassin. But now, having said that, seeing Steve Rails back in the movie, I would have bought him better as the Malkovich character, the villain. I would have bought him better 100 times, because I think he not only had the presence and the physicality, but the acting skills to pull it off. I would have bought him as that elite killer. You know what I mean? To put things in perspective on a performance-wise and a casting situation, the moment I seen Rails back for his brief 5 minutes, I thought, wow, he could have played the villain in this movie. I would have really bought it.
Yeah, easily.
But the the rooftop chase is where, like, the street race wasn't so bad, like they're dodging in between cars and things, but it's the rooftop race where you see the difference in physicality between a much older Clint Eastwood and John Malkovich, because John struggles to get across these rooftops. He's constantly tripping. He's fumbling. I don't know how much of that was in the script, but even just watching them moving, just studying their movement. And I don't know how deep he gets into that sort of character thing. If somebody told him, like, you're supposed to be a little clumsy running across the rooftops, I don't get it. That's not what I would do if I was having a CIA assassin. But Clint Eastwood looks like a gazelle compared to how he's moving across those rooftops.
Well, it's an old gazelle, but okay.
Yeah.
If that's who he is, if all of his wet work is he's just very clever, he's not physical, he's very good at beating up and killing women apparently, but maybe he's all of his stuff is shooting people or blowing people up or stabbing them when they're not looking, because that guy running across that rooftops.
We'll see.
I would take it in a heartbeat.
He's definitely better at being a shooter and being a spy and all of that than he is at close quarters combat.
But then I got to go back to what Lance and what we all were talking about, but Lance brought up, which is directing and writing, because if that's the case, you can't spend all that time showing him near to having a coronary when he's trying to keep it up while he's running the car, and then John Malkovich bagging on him, calling on him, telling about how he's about to die and he's winded and needs to get in better shape and all this other crap, or at least show him getting in better shape during the movie. Something,
Right. Mm-hmm. Not counting he had the flu, the plague. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like how James Bond in Skyfall goes from, being like not able to pass their exams, to suddenly being able to do like all the stuff that he's supposed to be doing, and nothing is shown as to him getting any better.
Well, here's the disappointing thing. Like, if you compare this to a movie like Seven, where they almost catch John Doe, and he doesn't lose anything in that scene, even though they discover his hideout. Yeah. But here you watch Malkovich, and what you should be doing is you should be ramping up the villain. It's like you said, the villain drives things. If the villain becomes lesser in my eyes in a couple of scenes, if it's not like the moment on the phone where, like, we say, like, Clint Eastwood's character gets to him and he loses his shit, he loses that cool he's had all this time. I can get into that, but like once you've made him less of a threat in the physical realm, then well,
then it's interesting, because as we've talked, it made me reevaluate the John Malkovich character, and now I see him more of a psycho. He's just pure psychopath. He's a killer who likes to kill. So
I will say some of it is in the execution. I could buy Clint Eastwood tricking him. You know, the whole thing where he's talking to Rene Russo while making Malkovich thinking he's talking to him. That was well done. And if let's say that he had been shot and that had killed him right there, that would have come across as, Eastwood being clever against an opponent that could physically overpower him.
Would have been
that could have worked. It was an execution mistake.
what do you think about that, Lance?
I actually was pleased in the moment. I thought the shooter were going to take out Malkovich. I thought it would have been better if he said aim high and he shot Malkovich and it was over with. That would have been really cool. But instead we have the silly grapple, the fight. Then he has to dangle off the side, offer him his hand, and then he just lets go. Yeah. It's like, no, I don't want my villain to give up. I don't want my villain just to give up. Right. I want him to get blown away.
No, he should. And this is part of the problem, because it's going back to this being a Hollywood production, and of course that means you have to have a fisticuff between the main villain and the main hero, and that's why it's drawn out and it doesn't work as well.
He should have definitely gone out like Hans Gruber, trying to shoot him as he was falling.
But there's the thing: when I watched the death scene of Malkovich's character, I was like, once again, they're ripping off Die Hard.
Yes, it was another exactly freaking formulaic cliche.
It was to the point where they showed him falling and then hitting and his face in slow motion, as he lets go. And I was like, this is Hans Gruber. So good stuff. Good
you
times.
See what it does though? When you revisit, when you see things, and we're going back 30 years, and we see the cliches and tropes, and the modern writers today that are getting the jobs, they don't get it. I mean, is that what you have to do? Do you have to sell out? Do you have to do what you think Hollywood needs you to do in order to get something made and then be ashamed of it for the rest of your life? It's like, come on, man.
That's right. Your name is on it. Just remember, your name is on it forever.
But at the same time, so let's wrap this up. And this is going to be the question go around. So final thoughts, but please answer this question. So my final thoughts are, as we talked about it, there's some things that have come into sharp focus for me about this movie. Quite a few things. However, I watched the movie and enjoyed it. And now I'm going, what the hell? Is it because I'm trained to enjoy these types of movies that I can put all of these deniability aside and put my nostalgia glasses on and enjoy it? Even though when I sit down and think about it, it's really not that good a movie. It's got some good stuff to it, You can
enjoy a movie that's not a good movie.
This is true. This is true.
Like I absolutely love the movie Van Helsing, and that's not a good movie at all.
This
but
is
it's
true
fun.
Too. Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's fun.
I agree. But we all have our guilty pleasures. Come on, I'll watch Showgirls over and over again.
What's your favorite scary movie?
And I will watch it because I'm fascinated about how much it's a piece of shit. But I'm like, this is the best piece of shit that I've ever seen. I will watch it over and over again behind the scenes. I want to know how everything is done. I'm guilty of it.
Van Helsing was Victorian MCU before MCU was MCU.
That's me and Barbarella. I can sit there and just watch that movie and laugh my ass off for 90
Absolutely.
minutes. Let's see. Good point. Friday the 13th Part 2, another piece of shit that you just watched forever. So. All right, Steve, final thoughts and answer that question. I think we've answered it. So final thoughts on the movie.
I haven't actually completely answered it. I think for me, this is one of those movies where it is emotionally satisfying, but it doesn't make sense. So you get movies like that. It's kind of like how we've discussed with the end of Aliens. Does it make sense? No. Is it emotionally satisfying? Sure. So it's easier to forgive that because there is that emotional satisfaction for the viewer. And that is because this is a formulaic movie and it does what you expect it to do. And because of that, you're sort of feeling, yay, the villain's done. Okay, it was kind of stupid, but the villain's gone. So that's kind of like why you get that. I can completely understand people liking it, and I will say I liked it on the rewatch, not realizing some of the problems with it, which have come definitely into focus in this conversation, and I definitely agree with a lot of that. So I think you can definitely pick certain things, and pick movies in certain places, and still feel like, okay, it's enjoyable enough, it does enough right. I can let that go, and I think that's what this movie is for me. The only other thing that I kind of want to add is we never really talked about Steve Railsback, so I'll do that a little bit.
Yeah.
I feel like his character definitely had the physicality to be that, but I bought him as the guy who trained Malkovich. I buy him as the guy who was his handler, who was the guy that made him what he is. And in a way he's a villain in his own way, because he was the monster who made this guy, and then set him aside when he was no longer convenient. When it's kind of implied that a lot of what he said was lies, it could have been true, because this guy works in very shady business. I mean, he could very well have lied about a lot of those details. He could have shown, Eastwood exactly what he wanted him to see, to get rid of a nuisance. He definitely would have been motivated. So in the little bit that we get, and Railsback plays it very, very well, we got a character who is at least reasonably interesting. And I will say that, he's nowhere near as memorable as Malkovich, but I think he did a good enough job in the short amount of time that he gets.
I will say this. The writers got this right. Prior to 9/11, this is how the FBI, CIA, NSA, Secret Service interacted with each other, which is not at all. I will leave it up to all of you to decide if it's better now or not. That's your own decision, but this is that they got right. So, Jeff.
Yeah, it's a movie of its time.
Yeah, final thoughts.
Yeah, it's a movie I enjoyed. I hadn't seen it in quite a long time. But, watching it not as a movie just to enjoy, but watching it with an analytical eye. Other than the parts I like, because there are parts I still genuinely like, there is that cathartic experience, and a skilled director can take an absurdity like a shark with a compressed air tank in its mouth that it doesn't spit out, and you can shoot it and blow it all to hell. A skilled director will make you cheer.
I got to stop you right there, Jeff. Jaws 2, you can hate on it, but that movie is friggin' a masterpiece compared to Jaws 4: The Revenge, where the goddamn shark travels to the Caribbean and knows who it's going after. So, okay. So.
Yeah, that was a
shark still looks fake.
Well, I was talking about Jaws 1, not Jaws 2. I don't know where Jaws 2 came from.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Well, any of the Jaws movies. Jaws 4 is the worst movie of all time, and it's my showgirl. So there it is.
But as Michael Caine said, I haven't watched the film, but I've seen the house that it paid for, and it's lovely. But yeah, so like this movie's enjoyable, but it is punctuated by a lot of flaws. There's a lot of stuff that's just it's formulaic, it's tropey, but if you can ignore that, you'll still have a good time watching it. It's got some good actors, some good performances, and in places some good writing between characters.
Cool. Lance, final thoughts on this movie?
I mean, it's Clint Eastwood. You know what I mean? You watch what he does. So, yeah. I admit, I think about after he did Unforgiven, this, A Perfect World, just like back to back. He did.
He also did. Was it the boxing movie?
Pretty Baby.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really all fast, and I blatantly remember, the Unforgiven.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then A Perfect World.
Million Dollar Baby. That was
$1 Million Baby. But this one totally just fell through the cracks for me. Do I regret watching it? No. It's like, okay, I got what I got out of it. But, 30 years later, maybe in another 30 years, I'll revisit it.
It's definitely not a film I'd come back to watch until we decided to do a podcast on it.
Now, and this is what's so great about this show, folks. So we, a lot of times we bring movies on here and we gush over them because they're movies that have lived on. And And Steve brought this movie back. He hadn't seen it in 30 years. And we wanted to take a look at it. And we've given you our honest opinion on it. There was good stuff. There was bad stuff. We broke it down. I think that I have got a deeper understanding of what I like and don't like about the movie after this. And this is what Cinema Crusaders is all about. And I want to thank you guys so much for breaking this movie down. It's always fun to talk to you about film, about films, not film. We're talking about film as well, but films in the general sense. So thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah, it's been good to go back and look at this movie again. I mean, yeah, time really definitely changes, and my understanding of the craft changed a lot in that time too, and that definitely colors like how you look at a film like this. So yeah, it's been good. It's been good to go back to it and see this again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeff.
You're welcome. It's always enjoyable, and I think during the course of the discussion, I've decided what movie I would like to talk about next.
Okay.
Something we will probably all enjoy. I don't think you've covered this film before, and I'm going to point to the actor Gary Cole, who is a particular favorite of mine ever since he was doing the series American Gothic, and that will be the movie Office Space.
Oh, yeah. I thought for a minute you were going to say, A Perfect Plan. Movie? No, A Perfect Plan.
The movie where they came in and filmed a day
plan.
when I worked in an office. So that was just one of my normal days.
I mean, to be fair, I was kind of thinking about a Brady Bunch movie, but like, let's face it, Office Space is a classic, and I want to dive into that. We've already
that'll be our second Mike Judge, because we
I know, and Mike Judge is an underappreciated genius.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool. I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
Yeah,
that movie's like a biopic of my life in corporate America. But
well, that's the idea. Mike Judge had a cubicle job and he hated it, and he made a movie about it.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I'm looking forward to that. What about you, Lance? What final thoughts on the film?
It was a fun watch. It was a fun watch. I was in all the way, despite all of the stuff I pointed out. I still was like, okay, let's do this. And I'm glad we're discussing stuff like this. I mean, it always brings to mind The Appointment. We went down a rabbit hole with that one of what the hell was this, but it was fun. I don't have regrets watching it. I have zero regrets.
No,
but it was, I think it's better if we're versatile, and the hits and the misses, or in our opinion, what a miss might be. Was one person might love it, another person might go, what the hell, but I think this is what makes it important, the format of what we do. Because we can't just gush over everything altogether. We got to be able to say, well, wait a second here. But I think what we're doing works out, and I like how we're doing the next degree of the film. Okay, how can we tie into it? Because that says a lot sometimes. It says a lot about a person's body of work, and I don't see anybody else doing what we're doing. I really don't see anybody else doing what we're doing, and I say, hey, let's just keep rocking.
Yeah, one of these days we may get to my personal bugaboo of a movie, which is Midnight Clear, and I will have to go to therapy if we ever talk about that movie again, if we watch it again. So there's that. So, all right. Thank you all so much for watching Cinema Crusaders. Please hit like on this video if you liked it. Leave a comment, please, and subscribe. We love doing these shows for you, and we love hearing from you as well. Until next time, make sure you keep that popcorn warm. Make sure you find a comfy couch over the weekend and go snuggle up and watch some cinema. Until then, we are the Cinema Crusaders, and I'm looking for the outro video. There it is. And we are out of here. Bye, everybody.
See ya.
Take care.